Just a heads up, I'm recording this entire video in iMovie, as I did with almost all my videos, so don't be expecting phenomenal quality. Also, if it wasn't obvious, I'm reading off of a script, which has got to be a first for my videos. This just helps me deliver the lines easier. But, without further ado, let's talk about Martin Walls. Now, before we get started, I'd like to acknowledge that I'm not the first to make a video on the Walten files. In fact, the video that inspired this video was made by fellow YouTuber Sagan Hawks. Go check out his video, it's infinitely better than this one. And, by proxy, go check out Martin's channel. I'd actually like to start out with Health Department PSA, which was Martin's first real video aside from some soundtrack videos. It's just a friendly reminder for everyone to stay safe and be aware of others during COVID-19. That is, until the last part of the video.
Now let's see how Bon is doing at the hospital after he got infected.
Bon is so dumb. He didn't follow the instructions. Now look at him. Follow the instructions. 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 Follow the instructions.
As we just saw, an eyeless Bon starts twitching in the air before transforming into a nightmarish, broken-down animatronic of Bon. All the while a distorted robotic voice repeats the line of "follow the instructions," and we can hear screaming. You can also hear a pitched-down version of the Chica's Party theme from FNAF 3. I don't think this has any relevance to the lore, it's just a cool Easter egg. In the final seconds of the video, we can see very faint text in the middle of the screen that reads "The Walten Files" before cutting to static. This leads me to believe that this video serves as a teaser for the main series. Finally, we're getting into company introductory tape, the main focus of this video. We learn that we have just been hired at Bon's Burgers as technical support, more specifically as a facility caretaker. We're then introduced to a truly disturbing Bon animatronic and his gang. Props to Martin for making some really uncanny animatronics. We're then introduced to
Bon, Shaw, Buzu, and Banny,
as well as a fifth member later on. We learn that these monstrosities are actually a computer-animated team for reasons currently unknown. We then see what I consider to be the first paranormal occurrence in the tape.
cleaning protocols,
Robot maintenance and repair.
and learning how to use BSI technology.
The audio becomes distorted once we see the back room. I'll elaborate on this later. We then get a word from the founders Jack Walten and Felix Kranken.
In BSI, the most important thing to us isn't the money or the rating. The most important thing to us is that you have a wonderful experience while working with us.
The tape corrupts, and then we get a notice for the company's storage building in the middle of a forest. Strangely, the notice talks about a previous location being closed for good, as well as mentioning an incident in 1974. Yet another corruption, and we get a rabbit speaking in reverse. Watch Sagan Hawk's video as he tries to make sense of the reverse audio. We then cut to a cartoon called Little Bon's Neighborhood, with the episode Bon's Super Sleepover. In it, Bon invites some of his friends to come over and watch a movie. We're introduced to Ronald Billy. Bon decides to invite over Shaw, Buzu, and Billy. To repeat, Bon invites Shaw, Buzu, and Jack Walten. Once this happens, we can see that Bon's eyes have been removed, similarly to the Bon animatronic from the Health Department PSA. Anyway, once his friends come over, Bond picks out the movie they'll see.
Bond spent all his money on a really funny movie, which he
hopes all of his friends will enjoy and will laugh with little Bond.
Now that's funny. Once they pop the movie in, we see the words "Let me out of here" fade in before the tape corrupts. The narrator's voice distorts and cuts out as we focus on Bond. He hears something in the dark and decides to investigate. He discovers that the TV is on and is displaying a missing persons report for Jack Walten. He then finds a lighter, and upon flicking it on 4 times, the scene changes to a girl named Sophie holding the lighter, with the Bond animatronic behind her. We then cut to a tape from 1982 with a person driving through the woods, explaining that he's meant to keep an archive for the company. After finding the storage facility, he tests the broken down animatronics to see if they're still operational, I think. The Bond animatronic starts speaking in reverse, and we get a close-up of the Bond animatronic, with eyes materializing behind the mask with blood pouring down the face. We cut back to the man from before, running for his life.
What was that thing?
Afterwards, the tape cuts to a scene of the Bond animatronic wavering next to the man, screeching as the man turns on his flashlight. The tape corrupts. We cut to a familiar-looking model of a face, switching to a distorted man in a purple suit, in which Sagan Hawks points out that his arm appears to be torn off. Text below him reads, "I can't feel anything," and "He thought I was her," before we finally cut to an employee tag for a man named Brian Stells. Then the credits roll. Now, what does all of this mean? Using the evidence from this first tape, I think that Jack Walten committed some sort of crime, and he's trying to kill the only witness to it. Let's look at the evidence. First of all, let's look at the name Martin chose, the Walten Files. This series is about Jack Walten and his disappearance. Next, I believe that he committed some crime. Notice what happens every time Jack Walten is shown or mentioned.
And Felix Kranken, our beloved founder.
Which reads, in BSI, the most important thing to us isn't the money or the rating. The most important thing to us is that you have a wonderful experience while working with us.
Bond invited Shah, Bozu, and Bond spent all his money on a really funny movie, which he
hopes all of his friends will enjoy and will laugh with little Bond.
The tape corrupts. Every time Walten is on screen, the tape corrupts. It may be a stretch, but watch what happens here.
Such as cleaning protocols
Robot maintenance and repair.
and learning how to use BSI technology.
I believe that Walten lured some children into the back room and killed them, as the audio distorts when we see the back rooms. This would explain why the company moved everything from the 74 location in the middle of a forest, the incidents of 74, why the company would switch to computer-animated performers, and even the smell the tape man complained about before. However, I believe that the girl Sophie witnessed everything, but this is where things get complicated. First of all, the distorted purple man. His quote of, "He thought I was her," makes me think that whoever he was, presumably the Bond animatronic, was made to kill Sophie. Also, I'd like to mention that we can identify this man as Brian Stells, as his employee tag reads that he is a facility caretaker, much like the man in the forest.
This is the brand new caretaker for the old Funny Smiles facility.
But also because he's the only credited voice actor, aside from the computer-generated voices. But here's where things get messy. See, this scene right here implies that Sophie's spirit is haunting the Bon animatronic as she replaces Bon in the shot. But why would the Bon animatronic still attack Brian? Assuming this scene chronologically predates Brian's arrival, then the Bon animatronic would have no need to attack Brian, assuming that Walten thought Sophie would discover the facility first, and that Walten made an animatronic with the sole purpose of disposing of Sophie. The job would have been done already. The only way I can see this working out is if this scene takes place after 1982, with Sophie being called to the facility. Sure, Jack Walten may be missing, but that doesn't mean he's dead or can't make contact to those close to him. Also, Martin, if you by any chance are watching this, I'm not trying to sound like I'm trying to copy Sagan Hawks' request for helping you with the series, but if you need any amateur artwork, I got you covered.